Welcome to the Casting Across Fly Fishing Podcast. I'm Matthew of castingacross.com, where I explore the quarry and culture of fly fishing. This is the 354th episode of the podcast, so thank you for listening. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, I appreciate the fact that you have added me to your day. Well, today I'm talking about something that I know I've talked about. It's not been in the last 150 episodes of the podcast, but I'm confident that there is something in the back catalog that touches on a very similar note. But I think it's okay that I'm revisiting it. In fact, I want to do a lot more revisiting for the reasons that, one, I know my audience changes, and two, I know that I change. So I don't expect people to go all the way back to episode number 1 and listen straight through, although if you have a really long road trip, I guess there's worse things to listen to than me. But also, I know that my perspectives on fly fishing have changed. They have gotten a little bit more streamlined in some senses, and they've expanded in others. And so I think it's probably a worthy endeavor to update some information. But this is also a topic that I fielded a handful of emails and questions about in the last few months. So I figured that maybe I have brought this question, and so I should go ahead and just address it. And it has to do with being minimalistic in your approach. Being minimalistic in your approach. And this really is kind of a gear-driven concept, but there's more to it than that. And let me address that first. So a lot of times when we think about minimalism, we like to think, okay, I'm going to go from wearing a big, heavy, over-laden vest down to a little chest bag. Okay, that's true. That's part of it. That's the gear-driven aspect of it. But there's more to it than just saying, I'm going to get rid of a few fly boxes. I'm not going to carry my streamside scientist tools and tying kit with me on the river. Okay, that is a significant element of it. But more than that is, what do I need? What is absolutely necessary for me to not only get out there and get after it, but do well? And when it comes to this topic, I want to use flies as like my case study. So one of the things that I really appreciate is the fact that some very, very skilled anglers that I have spent time with go with that whole presentation over pattern mantra. And I've really adopted that as something that I like to think about, not just on my little mountain trout streams up here in New England, but even when I'm on bigger rivers and spring creeks. So is there a time to match the hatch with precision? The answer is yes. But I believe that the silhouette of that fly and the way that it rides in the water is much more important than the colors, particularly when it is a really, really sunny day and that fish is going to have a blacked out silhouette because of the glare and the sun on the water, or when it is very, very low light conditions. And honestly, most of my great dry fly fishing happens right at dusk, which is by design a low light condition. So recently I was fishing, and there were blue wing olives that were kind of in the emerger stage, and I didn't have any. So I was fishing sulfur emergers, and I was killing it. The blue wing olives that were duns and spinners were not doing anything, but the sulfur emerger, which was imitating the shape and the silhouette and the presentation, if you will, of that natural insect, was doing just fine. The fish didn't say, "Oh no, I'm looking for olive and for blue dun, and what you got there is a pale yellow and a cream color. I'm not eating that." They are gorging themselves on insects that are riding in a certain place in the water column with a certain amount of their bodies underneath the surface film of the water. That is what they cared about. Could I have missed fish? Yes, but I was catching enough of them that I didn't have time to think about that or worry about that. So all that to say that that's the mindset. One of the mindsets I would bring to the table when it comes to being minimalistic. And so my fly box, when I am looking to be minimalistic, reflects this. Now, I'll just give you a quick rundown of what that looks like. If I had to pick 5 flies today, it would be an Adams parachute, a Humpy, a Copper John, and a beadhead hare's ear nymph for my my respectable flies, and then a woolly bugger for the fly that's actually going to catch fish. Well, what does this do? What do these 5 flies do? Parachute Adams is a delicate mayfly imitation. That Humpy is a more bulky mayfly or caddisfly or terrestrial imitation. The Copper John nymph is going to present a more delicate, yet at the same time attractive subsurface profile that will also penetrate water quickly. If I want to get a fly that's down fast, it's going to do that much faster than even the beadhead hare's ear nymph, which because of its materials and the fact that it's really buggy is going to be more naturally buoyant. But now I can combine all of those flies and create some really great dry dropper or multi-nymph rigs, particularly if I carry a few different sizes of each. And I'm fine with carrying 2 sizes, 3 patterns of each size. And then there's the woolly bugger, which is going to be a streamer. It's going to be a nymph. I can fish it quickly. I can fish it slowly. It's going to imitate larger subsurface macroinvertebrates, and it's also going to imitate everything from crayfish to bait fish. And now I have really the entire water column covered. And if I fish them with intentionality, I'm able to present flies in such a way that even if I don't have 5 or 6 fly boxes on me, I'm going to be able to cover that water pretty well. And this is, again, a good start. Now, I don't take that mindset and say, okay, well, I know there's going to be hoppers all over the place because I've driven by and they're buzzing all over the stream, but I'm still going to stick with those size 14 humpies because they're close enough to a hopper. No, if I know there's going to be hoppers, I'm going to throw hoppers in that bag. If I'm traveling and they say, okay, there's going to be a hex hatch, I'm not going to say, well, I'm going to see what the biggest Parachute Adams that I have in my pack is going to be. I'm just going to fish that, and hopefully those fish are going to go after it. No, I'm going to fish the flies that I know are going to be successful. But those might not be the things that are going to always be in my pack. The example that I used for years and years is I would carry my giant dry fly box with me anywhere and everywhere I went. And there would be these coffin flies in there. And they would take up so much space because they're extended bodies and really long poly wings. And I would bring them everywhere I went, just because you never know. Well, I could be very confident that for 50-ish weeks out of the year, I'm not going to be fishing coffin flies. But in the back of my head, I justified it saying like, well, I could always trim off the wings and it could be this, really interesting profile. And I could even, add some sinking liquid to it and I could drop it down as a big nymph. And it was really just justifying carrying more bugs. Okay. So it's about that mindset of I don't need everything. I need what I know works and what I have confidence in. So that's the first kind of mentality perspective before I get into the gear. The second one that I want to bring up is why might you want to do this? So again, we're talking about kind of theory before we get to practice. Why you might want to do this is, one, because you want to simplify. You don't want to be overwhelmed by choices, particularly if you're a new angler. We accumulate flies in really haphazard ways. We get an assortment here, an assortment there. We go to a function, they give us a box of really random and weird stuff, and we just accumulate flies. That's great. It's nice to have in your car or at your desk at home a ton of different random weird flies. But when you're out on the stream, sometimes it's nice to say, this is what I have. How can I fish with this and make it better, and make it work? And so we do that when we're trying to be minimalistic. We do that when we're trying to slow down and focus. We do that out of necessity when we are traveling. And we do that out of necessity when we just have maybe a little bit of a bug out bag in the back of our car if we just so happen to fish. It's just not reasonable for most folks to always have their full fly fishing loadout in the back of their car. It's not reasonable to have a travel bag that is devoted only to fly fishing if your trip isn't a fly fishing only trip. If you're going somewhere with your family, if it's an anniversary trip, if you're doing a lot of hiking and you may come across some fly fishing opportunities, you're not going to necessarily have all the luggage that is required to have a full fly fishing kit with you. And then being minimalistic, again, you're paring down on purpose, and fishing with intentionality, you're paring down on purpose as well. So those are kind of the two things that I wanted to bring to the table when it came to the philosophies behind why you're doing this. One is intentionality, kind of the discussion about paring down your fly choices, and secondly, it could be the different circumstances may necessitate you having less stuff. And I really have come to appreciate this, the approach of kind of forcing yourself to have less. Again, I had the giant vest with the random stuff in it, the flies I was never going to use, the ugly flies that I tied myself that I felt like I had to bring with in case a circumstance presented itself, the random tools that people got me for Christmas that I threw in my, I've got a pocket for it, so I'm going to put it in the pocket. I don't want an empty pocket in my vest. That's one of the reasons why I moved away from vests, because I felt like I filled them up. But now I have a handful of different packs and bags, and I use them for different purposes. And so let's talk about my minimalist / travel pack. Now, again, this can always be amended, or I can find some way to augment it if I know I'm going to be encountering a certain situation. So if I knew I was going to be in South Central Pennsylvania right now, I would have Hexagenia nymphs and dries, and then my full assortment of whitefly patterns, because I know that hatch is going to be happening right now. But here's what I like to do. I like to have a pack. I know some people, when they're going minimalistic, they want to just throw things in their pockets, and that's great, and that's a really fun way to fish, and it's a nice light way to move. But I like the convenience and the out of sight, out of mind kind of preparation of having everything in a very small pack. So I have a small sling pack that really is about the size of a paperback book could be fit in there. And I feel like that is sufficient. I also like a pack that maybe I can fit all of my gear into, even if I'm going to clip my tools on the outside of it when I get fishing. This gives me the flexibility of throwing, like an RX bar or something inside of it when I am out on the water. I'm not cramming as much into it as I can. I'm giving myself a little bit of buffer. So I have that fly box filled with those flies that I talked about earlier. Another thing that I think is essential is a good pair of forceps that also has scissors in it. One of the things that folks have said over and over again as I've talked about nippers is, oh, I don't carry nippers, I just carry forceps. Well, if I have a good pair of forceps that have been designed well, such that I can use the scissors in those forceps with precision, I will use those, especially if I'm trying to pare back on my equipment. But I do like how a good pair of nippers is going to have a hook eye cleaner, which I think is a very, very important thing to have on you. And generally speaking, the jaws of nippers are created in such a way that you can get in really nice and close. That said, I don't need to carry a pair of nippers if I have a good pair of forceps that have a good scissor somewhere along those jaws. So flies, forceps, floatant. And I'm not going to keep the alliteration going. I'm sorry. Those are the 3 F's. Floatant is an absolute must have floatant. And this is one of those things too, where, I would say, like, I use desiccant a lot. I really like having that little jar of throwing my fly in, shaking it, and drying that thing off, but it isn't necessary. If I have a shirt that has any sort of absorption qualities to it, I will pinch my fly in that shirt, and I will suck the water out of it and then wave it around with a handful of false casts and fish with it, because I don't necessarily need that desiccant. So flies, forceps, floatant, and then tippet. One of the things I don't skimp on is tippet. I like to carry 0 through 6X. And so you've got kind of a, like the mini Coke can style stack of tippets. And here's the reason why I like to carry all of them. I would rather carry 6 spools of tippet than carry a bunch of leaders. You say, well, leaders don't take up a lot of space. No, they don't take up a lot of space, but I like the ability to make significant adjustments to my leader on the fly whenever I want to. And so that butt section, even if you get a wind knot or a bad tangle in that butt section, you're going to be able to undo it. So that first 3 feet of a knotless tapered monofilament or fluorocarbon leader is virtually bulletproof. And then from there, you can go from your 0 to your 1 to your 2x, and you can make all the necessary modifications that you need to make in order to have a leader that will fish the way that you need to fish and the way that you want to fish. I don't necessarily want to carry a leader wallet when I am deep in the mountains, but if I come across a beaver pond and I need to completely change up my presentation so that I'm fishing a stillwater presentation, then I can rebuild that leader on the fly, and now I have my stillwater leader. Or if I'm wanting to throw a streamer, I can change it up, and now I have a streamer leader, and having that variety of tippet allows me to do that. And of course, all these things go on what I believe to be one of the most effective and efficient and worthwhile pieces of equipment to have, which is the fly trap fly holder. It's a great little tool where you can put all of your tippet spools. There's a little patch for putting your flies that you want to dry out, or even if you only have a handful of flies, you can keep them all on there. Then there's a couple of lash points for your tools. So my tippet, my spent flies, and my forceps can all go onto that. And my floating, if I've got my floating on a little floating caddy. And so they go from the inside of the pack to the outside of the pack, and I'm ready to fish. And again, I have room inside my pack for other stuff. Now, the last thing that I would say is kind of on the edge is a little tiny tub of split shot. What I like to do actually is make my own little tubs of extra gear. I use small fly boxes that are compartment fly boxes, and I'll put some of the most popular split shot sizes that I use in there, and I'll put a couple of strike indicators. That way I'm not having to look at all of my strike indicator packages to see how many's in there. I can real quickly say, okay, I've got 2 thingamabobbers or 2 Oros strike indicators, and that should be good. And then I've got enough small split shot that if I lose a bunch, then I'm still probably good for the day. So that is like a smaller than a fly box, but it's a tiny little. I find them from fly shops when you go in and buy flies. It may be a little 4-compartment or 2-compartment clip lid box, and that goes in there with all of those necessary pieces of equipment. So this is basically my irreducible pack. Are there other things that I'll throw in there? Of course. If I know that I'm going to be in contact with some really large trout, then I will carry a net. I want to have that flexibility. If I know that I'm going to be in a situation where it is important for me to have a second fly line. So again, going from trout to talking about saltwater, I have effectively the same kit for saltwater. You take out the strike indicators and the and the split shot and the floatant, and I have basically the same setup with a small amount of flies. But I will carry a second spool. I like to fish salt, especially if I'm fishing on the beach with 2 rods and 2 reels. But if I'm trying to pare down what I have, especially if I'm traveling, then I'm going to bring a second spool so I can have my floating line and my intermediate or sink tip line. And that can go into that pack as well. And what this does, again, is it forces you to say, okay, I can fish a Clouser minnow with my floating line in a couple different ways, and I can fish a Clouser minnow. There you go. There's my southern coming out. A Clouser minnow with my sinking or intermediate line in a couple different ways, and I can, through the way that I cast, present, strip, I can fish the entire water column. I don't need 4 lines, and I don't need 4 different weights of Clousers to effectively fish well. And I might be much more intentional in the way I fish if I have to think about what I'm doing rather than just saying, I don't feel like I'm getting this close enough to where those fish are sitting in this rip. I'm just going to throw a bigger fly on. That might be the solution. It also might be that I can cast better. It also might be that I can strip better. It also might mean I can position myself better. And if it's a huge hassle to bring more stuff, then those are the kind of things that are definitely worth doing. So that's kind of my rundown of my essential gear that I bring with me if I'm traveling. If I'm going at it from a minimalistic perspective, if I keep stuff in the back of my car, and this time of the year, it's not so much trout gear as it is warm water gear, or if I am just wanting to think less and fish more. And so that's really my base level approach to it. I know this has changed. I know that some of the equipment I used to bring, I don't bring anymore. I know that some things I value now, I didn't value before. And so that's why I'm confident in talking about this again when I know I've talked about it in the past. So, what would you change? What is your essential piece of gear? If you say, I need my knot tying tool. All right, that's cool. I get it. If you say, I can't go without, a huge fly box. I'm willing to compromise on tools because I really, really want a big fly box. Great. How about flies? Is there a confidence fly that you will not go without? And I could just easily say beadhead pheasant tail, as you could with a beadhead hare's ear. But even that, let me give you my rationale. A pheasant tail, I would say, is almost in between a copper john and a hare's ear. So say you only wanted one nymph. Maybe I'd go with pheasant tail, but now we're really limiting ourselves, and we're almost doing it for novelty's sake. But that's kind of where I see the copper john and the hare's ear are ends of the spectrum of those kind of nymphs. One much more streamlined and tighter body, one much more buggy. And you can also tie each of those flies in a more kind of compromised way. But again, this is a great thing for people to debate about and come up with their top flies. Actually, years ago, when I was doing a lot more work with companies and kind of advertising, like, hey, I'd love to do projects with you, I had a fly company put together a couple of fly assortments based upon the very thing I talked about today, and marketed them and sold some, and I think they did well. That's some good stuff. Anyway, questions, comments, accusations about being minimalistic in your approach, regardless of the reason why you're doing it, let me know. Matthew@castingacross.com. As always, I would love to hear from you. And if I hear from enough of you about the same thing, you're going to get a podcast about it. And that's a fun part of doing it the way that I do it. Monday's article on Casting Across is called Rusty Flybox Awkward. Rusty Flybox Awkward. I'm not sure why I did this, but a lot of people read it, so that's great. But it's 3 awkward angling encounters that I've talked about, written about in the past on Casting Across, now have made it into one place, and you can click on it and read those 3 awkward angling encounters. Wednesday's post was video, The Magic of Small Flies, in which I link to a video from YouTube where I feature Midge Magic by the late Don Holbrook and the late Ed Koch. Don Holbrook just passed away in July of 2025, and Ed Koch passed away about 15 years ago. But this is a great South Central PA contribution to the really worthwhile endeavor of tying and fishing midges. Don't be afraid of midges. There's plenty of tools, and that's a great example. You might say, hey, my eyesight is not great. I love fishing midges, so I will need to bring a threader box and some threader tools with me. Great, go for it. I can still, most hours of the day, fit that 7X through those size 26 hooks. So I don't need to bring that, but I understand why people might. But anyway, all that to say, if you have not gone on YouTube and you've not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do that. I've been putting out one video a week for really since the turn of the year, and they've all been book reviews. And so Midge Magic is a great little book, and I would definitely recommend it to you if you like fishing midges or if you're interested in tying midges. This week's recommendation is a video, and it's a video about tying midge larvae. And I actually believe, and I say this because it's anecdotally true, that if you start tying simple midges, your confidence for fly tying is going to be through the roof. I mentioned in my video about Midge Magic about how I started tying smaller and smaller and smaller Griffith's gnats, and I started catching lots of fish on them, and it really just kind of boosted my confidence that I filled up a fly box, I was catching fish, and it made me really endeavor to tie more and different flies because I was doing something very simple, and honestly, you think about what goes into tying a Griffith's gnat, the fact that you want to spend $3 or $4 on that, it's worth taking a few seconds and learning how to tie a small half hitch to finish those suckers off. All that to say, the video I am linking to in the show notes of this podcast page, or you can go find it yourself. It's called Simple Midge Larva from Tightline Video, which is Tim Flagler's channel. As of posting it, over 18,000 people have watched it. So a lot of people, yourself maybe included, have seen this. But it really goes through some of the things to think about. It's a 5-minute video for a fly that is basically 3 materials, but is very, very small. But it is so incredibly effective. It's worth figuring out how to tie these things, because once you start tying midges, you are going to fill up boxes, you are going to catch fish, and like I said, I think it's going to really go a long way in increasing your confidence as you go to tie larger flies. Tying perfect Catskill style dries is a great thing to do, but you're going to get away with catching a lot more fish as you tie midge larvae. So anyway, show notes of this podcast page of Casting Across, you will find a link to Tim's simple midge larva video that he did in conjunction with the good folks over at Fly Tire Magazine. Thanks for listening to the Casting Across Fly Fishing Podcast. Please subscribe to your favorite podcast app and rate the podcast in Spotify and in Apple Podcasts. Then head over to castingacross.com for 3 posts a week on the people, places, and things that go into the pursuit of fish.